Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The late afternoon sun bathed the shopping avenue in a golden light. Shop windows sparkled, attracting hurried passers-by, wide-eyed tourists, and regular customers accustomed to luxury boutiques. Amidst this bustle, a sleek and discreet black limousine was parked a few meters away. Its tinted windows concealed the powerful man who was observing the scene with rapt attention. This man, Richard Hamilton, a respected billionaire, was calmly waiting for his son's nanny to finish her shopping. Richard was not only a business magnate, but also a protective father, although often too absorbed by his responsibilities to be as present as he would have liked. From his limousine, he always kept a watchful eye on his child. Inside a neighboring store, Daniel Carter, a young employee, was stocking shelves. Daniel had no fortune, no prestigious name. He was simply an honest man, working long hours to support his ailing mother and make ends meet in a big city where everything was expensive. His colleagues knew him for his diligence and sense of duty, but no one expected his life to change forever that day. Suddenly, a panicked scream pierced the air. A nanny, engrossed in her phone, had dropped the stroller. It was rolling rapidly toward the street, where a car was approaching at high speed. In a fraction of a second, passers-by froze, unable to react. But without thinking, Daniel sprang from his shop. His heart was pounding, his legs pounding the ground with desperate energy. Just before the stroller reached the edge of the road, he lunged forward and grabbed it firmly, stopping it just inches from the danger. The baby, frightened but unharmed, burst into tears, while Daniel, panting, held him carefully. Around him, some passers-by applauded, others remained in shock. The nanny, pale and trembling, rushed to retrieve the child, ashamed of her recklessness. Daniel, for his part, was still unaware of what he had just done. What he didn't know was that behind the limousine's tinted windows, Richard Hamilton had seen everything. The most influential man in town had just witnessed the most moving scene he had experienced in years. A simple employee had just saved his son's life. And from that moment on, Daniel Carter's destiny would change forever. Daniel Carter placed the stroller back in the nanny's trembling hands. She stammered out apologies, unable to meet his gaze. The young employee simply nodded, still breathless, and returned to the store's entrance without trying to draw attention to himself. For him, it was just a reflex, a natural gesture. Saving that baby was the obvious thing to do. But behind him, the whispers of passers-by had already begun. Some were taking photos, others recounting what they had just seen, sometimes exaggerating the scene as if Daniel were a hero from a movie. He, however, felt almost embarrassed by this sudden attention. In the limousine, Richard Hamilton remained motionless. His eyes were fixed on the hurried employee who resumed his work as if nothing had happened. Richard clenched his fists. He had seen the danger, he had felt his heart break at the thought of losing his son, and this stranger, this unassuming employee, had acted where so many others had remained frozen. "Who is this boy?" he asked in a deep voice to his driver, a discreet man who had accompanied him for years. I think he works in that store, sir," replied the driver. "Just an employee." Richard nodded, his gaze becoming more intense. A simple employee, perhaps. But he had just saved what he held most dear. As the limousine slowly started up, Richard made a decision. This young man wasn't going to remain a stranger. He deserved far more than a polite thank you. Meanwhile, Daniel, unaware of what was happening, was putting the last boxes away on his shelf, still a little shaken by what he had just experienced. For him, the day was drawing to a close. For his destiny, it was only just beginning. That same evening, Daniel returned home, exhausted. His small apartment on the 4th floor of an old building wasn't exactly luxurious, but he called it his refuge. After a quick shower, he went to see his mother, who was sitting in her armchair, knitting slowly. Despite her illness, which was weakening her a little more each day, she gave him a radiant smile. "You've been working late again, Daniel. You need to take care of yourself," she said softly. "I'm fine, Mom," he replied, kissing her forehead. As long as I can help you, that's all that matters. He said nothing about the incident. For him, it didn't need to be recounted. But elsewhere, in a luxurious residence, the same event took on a completely different dimension. In his study, adorned with wood paneling and old master paintings, Richard Hamilton relived the scene. He could still see the stroller sliding, the car approaching, and that young man appearing out of nowhere. His heart raced just thinking about it. He picked up his phone and called his personal assistant. "I want you to investigate an employee. He works in a store on the main avenue. Brown hair, employee jacket. Find his name, his address, everything you need. And quickly." "Very well, sir," replied the voice on the other end of the line, accustomed to precise and firm orders. Richard got up and walked to his son's room. The little boy was sleeping peacefully, as if nothing had happened. The billionaire placed a protective hand on his crib and murmured, "You are alive thanks to him, a stranger who saved your life. I owe him everything." Meanwhile, Daniel was falling asleep on his simple bed, unaware that a powerful man, somewhere in the city, was about to turn his life upside down. The next morning, Daniel resumed his work as usual. The previous day's incident had already faded from his mind. He focused on his tasks, stocking shelves, answering customers, cleaning the display windows. For him, nothing had changed. But, in the middle of the afternoon, an elegant man entered the store. Perfectly tailored suit, luxury watch on his wrist, confident stride. His eyes scanned the room until they settled on Daniel. "Good morning," he said in a polite but firm voice. "You are Daniel Carter?" Daniel blinked in surprise. Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" The man gave a faint smile. "My name is Andrew Collins. I represent a private individual who would like to meet you." Daniel frowned, suspicious. "Meet me? For what reason?" Andrew remained calm, but his words remained mysterious. "Let's just say that your actions yesterday did not leave some people indifferent." Daniel felt a growing unease within him. "If it's about what happened with the stroller, I only did what anyone would have done." "Don't be mistaken," replied Andrew, his expression serious. "Many would have hesitated. You, on the other hand, acted." Daniel remained silent, even more intrigued. "Listen," Andrew continued, "my employer would like to thank you personally. Nothing official, nothing worrisome. Just a meeting." Daniel hesitated. It all seemed strange to him, almost unreal. Why would anyone want to meet him for a simple reflex? I don't know," he finally said. "I'm not used to this kind of thing." Andrew placed a business card on the counter. "Take some time to think about it. My employer is no ordinary man. And believe me, this meeting could very well change your life." Then he left as quickly as he had arrived, leaving Daniel with more questions than answers. All evening, Daniel stared at the business card lying on his table. Andrew Collins's name was printed on it in simple letters, along with a private number. Nothing more. No company name, no address. It only fueled his curiosity. He spoke briefly to his mother about it, but chose to downplay the events. "An elegant fellow came by today," he said, shrugging his shoulders. "He wants me to meet his employer." "And you plan to go?" she asked, intrigued. "Honestly? I don't know. It seems too strange to me." Yet, deep down, Daniel felt that something important lay behind this invitation. The next day, while he was putting away a new delivery of boxes at the store, Andrew reappeared. Still impeccable, still confident. "Have you thought about it, Mr. Carter?" he asked in a calm voice. Daniel, taken aback, let out a slight sigh. "Very well. I will come. But only if you finally tell me who this employer is." Andrew gave a slight smile, but did not answer directly. "You will find out soon. A car will pick you up tomorrow evening, at precisely 7 p.m., in front of this store." "A car?" repeated Daniel, astonished. Yes. And I advise you not to be late. Without waiting for an answer, Andrew left, leaving behind a new wave of mystery. That evening, Daniel told his mother what awaited him. She, although surprised, gave him an encouraging smile. Perhaps life is finally giving you a chance, she said softly. Sometimes you have to have the courage to seize it. Daniel nodded, torn between excitement and apprehension. Who would want to see him so much as to send an assistant and a limousine? He was still unaware that, behind this veil of mystery, hid the man whose child had almost lost his life the day before. The following evening, at precisely 7 o'clock, Daniel left the store, nervous. On the sidewalk, a black limousine was waiting for him, exactly as Andrew had promised. Passers-by stopped to admire it, murmuring about the importance of the person who must be inside. Daniel hesitated for a second, wondering if he was making a mistake. Then, taking a deep breath, he stepped forward. Andrew, already there, opened the door with a polite smile. "Come in, Mr. Carter." Daniel took his seat, settling awkwardly onto the immaculate leather. The subtle scent of a refined perfume hung in the air. Inside, silence reigned, broken only by the discreet purr of the engine. Seated opposite him, an elegant man in his 50s, with piercing eyes, stared at him. His presence commanded respect without him needing to utter a word. "Good evening, Daniel," he said finally in a deep but calm voice. "My name is Richard Hamilton." Daniel's eyes widened. The name was familiar to him, he had already read it in the newspapers. A magnate, a feared and admired businessman, one of the wealthiest men in the country. I don't understand," Daniel stammered. Why do you want to see me?" Richard gave a slight smile, then his gaze softened. "Because yesterday, without even knowing it, you saved my son's life." Daniel felt his breath catch. The image of the stroller immediately came back to his mind. "The baby, was that your son?" Richard nodded slowly. "Yes. And what you did? I will never forget it." A heavy silence fell. Daniel, feeling uneasy, lowered his eyes. "Mr. Hamilton, I only did what seemed right to me. I don't deserve—" "Don't say that," Richard interrupted, his voice firm but filled with gratitude. "You deserve more than you imagine." Then he added, looking him straight in the eyes. "That is why I intend to offer you an opportunity that you would never have thought possible." Daniel froze, unable to reply. The word opportunity echoed in his head like an enigma. Richard Hamilton, this man whose mere signature could move millions, spoke to him as if his life was about to change overnight. "An opportunity?" he repeated, uncertainly. "I don't understand." Richard folded his hands in front of him, his gaze still fixed on Daniel. "Yesterday you proved that you possess two qualities that money cannot buy, courage and instinct. You didn't think, you didn't calculate. You acted." Daniel lowered his eyes, a little embarrassed by the praise. "I only did what anyone would have done." "No," Richard interrupted firmly. "The truth is, most people would have stood by. You saved a life. And not just any life, my son's." Silence fell in the limousine. Daniel felt the gravity of those words. Richard continued, more softly. "I want to give you a chance. You work hard, I know that. But you deserve more than spending your days stocking shelves in a store that offers you no future." Daniel frowned. "How do you know?" Richard gave an almost imperceptible smile. "I've done my research. I know that you live alone with your sick mother, that you work long hours to pay for her treatments, and that despite everything, you never complain." Daniel felt his heart clench. The idea that this man, a stranger the day before, knew so much about him almost worried him. "So, what do you expect from me?" he asked cautiously. Richard leaned slightly towards him, his eyes shining with a rare intensity. "I want to offer you a position by my side. Not as a mere employee, but as someone I trust." Daniel was speechless. Him? Working for one of the most powerful men in the country? It seemed unreal. Richard calmly concluded. I'm not asking for an immediate answer. Think about it. But know one thing, an opportunity like this only comes once in a lifetime. The limousine pulled up gently in front of the modest building where Daniel lived. The driver opened the door, but before he got out, Richard added, "You saved what I hold most dear. Now, let me help you save your future." Daniel got out, still dazed. As the limousine drove away, he wondered if what he had just experienced was real, or simply the beginning of an impossible dream. Daniel slowly climbed the stairs of his building, his heart still reeling from the encounter. Pushing open the door of his small apartment, he found his mother sitting in her armchair, a blanket on her lap. She looked up and smiled, as always, despite the weariness etched on her face. "You seem thoughtful," she said softly. Daniel hesitated, then sat down opposite her. "Mom, something incredible has happened." He told everything: the limousine, Richard Hamilton, the story of the baby, and above all, this unexpected proposal. His voice wavered between excitement and worry. "And he really offered you a job?" she asked, her eyes wide. "Yes," replied Daniel with a sigh. "But I don't understand why me. I'm nothing special. I'm just a shop employee." Her mother gently took her hand. "You think it's nothing to have risked your life to save a child? You think it's nothing to work tirelessly to pay for my medication? Daniel, what you consider ordinary is actually extraordinary." Daniel looked away, touched but still hesitant. What if it was just a trap? A man like him isn't used to extending a hand without expecting something in return. Her mother smiled faintly. "Maybe. But sometimes life throws challenges our way, and sometimes, it throws gifts our way. The biggest risk you could take would be not trying." Daniel remained silent. His mother's words resonated within him like a truth he still refused to accept. She added softly, squeezing his hand tighter. "You have always been my hero. Perhaps it's time you became your own hero too." That night, Daniel slept little. Richard's words and his mother's echoed in his head. Should he accept this proposal? Was it fate, or a gilded trap? One thing was certain: her life would never be the same again. The next day, Daniel woke up with a decision in mind. His doubts hadn't disappeared, but his mother's words still echoed: the biggest risk would be not trying. He dialed the number written on the business card. Andrew Collins' voice, calm and professional, responded almost immediately. "Mr. Carter. I imagine you have made your decision." "Yes," said Daniel with a hint of hesitation. "I will agree to meet Mr. Hamilton again." A slight smile seemed to be heard in Andrew's voice. "Excellent decision. I will come and pick you up tomorrow morning. Dress simply, but appropriately." The next day, a black sedan, more discreet than the limousine, was waiting in front of Daniel's building. His mother, from the window, gave him an encouraging wave. Daniel took a deep breath before getting in. After a 30-minute drive, the car passed through tall wrought iron gates and entered a vast estate. Before him stood an impressive mansion with white columns, a meticulously manicured garden, and a central fountain. Daniel felt his breath catch. He had never seen such opulence so close up. Andrew led him through the entrance hall. The marble floors reflected the light from the immense chandeliers. Master paintings adorned the walls, and every detail exuded luxury and power. Daniel felt out of place, like an ant in a world that wasn't his own. They were ushered into a large office. Richard Hamilton stood behind a wide mahogany desk, dressed in a simple but perfectly tailored suit. When he saw Daniel, he stood up and approached with a genuine smile. "Daniel, I'm glad you came." Daniel nodded, intimidated. "Thank you for inviting me, sir." Richard placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "This is just the beginning. From today onward, if you accept, I want to bring you into my inner circle. You won't just be an employee, but someone I trust." Daniel felt a strange warmth wash over him. Was he ready to enter this world? Richard added seriously. "But know this, Daniel. The business world is ruthless. If you accept, there will be no going back. Silence fell again. Daniel knew he had to answer. A single word would decide his future. Daniel had accepted. The weight of this decision still rested on his shoulders, but he also felt an excitement he had never known. He had just entered a world where every detail mattered, where the slightest mistake could be costly. The first few days were a culture shock. Richard Hamilton introduced him to his colleagues, impeccably dressed businessmen and women with quick, calculating glances. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with suspicion. Daniel, a simple and modest young man, felt he was being scrutinized from all sides. Andrew Collins stayed by her side, helping her understand the codes and expectations. "Here," he said, "it's not enough to work hard. You have to anticipate, know how to read people and understand the issues before they become problems." Daniel listened attentively, taking mental notes. He knew he had to prove his worth, not only to Richard, but to the entire team who were watching his every move. The first test came sooner than he expected. An emergency meeting was called to manage a crisis with a key business partner. Richard, confident, gestured towards Daniel. "You saved my son. Now, show me that you can save my business." Daniel felt his heart pounding. But instead of panicking, he focused. He proposed a clear solution, based on a quick analysis of the data provided. The skeptical faces of the executives gradually relaxed. Richard, for his part, watched him with a mixture of pride and careful evaluation. At the end of the meeting, a murmur rippled through the room. This young man, from the ordinary world, had found a way out that even veterans of the company had not considered. Richard placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder when they were alone. "That's good, but it's only the beginning. Here, every success will be followed by a new challenge. And sometimes, the people around you won't be your allies." Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility but also a strange pride. He had just understood that Richard Hamilton's world was not only made up of luxury and power, but also of high standards, strategy and constant vigilance. The following weeks were a whirlwind for Daniel. Each day brought its share of challenges, decisions to make, and lessons to learn. What had seemed impossible at first gradually became a demanding but stimulating routine. In Richard Hamilton's offices, Daniel distinguished himself not only for his practical intelligence but also for his loyalty and courage. The employees, initially skeptical, began to see him in a new light. Some showed him respect, while others remained wary, jealous of the attention Richard paid him. One afternoon, Richard invited Daniel to lunch in his private conference room, which offered a stunning view of the city. "Daniel," said Richard, smiling, "you have proven that you can act under pressure, make difficult decisions and remain honest in an environment where many would choose the easy way out." Daniel blushed slightly. "Thank you, sir. I'm just doing my best." Richard looked at him intently. "And that's exactly what I was looking for. But know this, your journey will never be easy. Some will want to see you fail, not because of your abilities, but out of jealousy or fear." Daniel nodded, sensing the gravity of these words. But he was ready. He knew that this world, although seductive and luxurious, demanded vigilance and strategy. "I understand," he said, "and I am ready to learn." Richard placed a hand on his shoulder. "Good. You have earned your place here. But remember, your true worth will not be measured solely by your achievements, but by your integrity and your ability to protect those who depend on you." At that moment, Daniel thought of his mother, his small apartment, his sacrifices, and he knew that everything he had accomplished so far was only the beginning. From a simple store employee to an associate of one of the most powerful men in the country, Daniel had just taken the first step on a path where courage, determination, and loyalty would be his best allies. The baby he had saved and the man he had impressed were no longer strangers in his life, they had become the beginning of a future he would never have dared to imagine.